Good morning and welcome to the City Talk webinar. This is the first in a series of 3 events featuring the results from our NORDGREEN project on smart planning for healthy and green Nordic cities. I'm Annika Östman, I'm the head of communications here at NordRegio, and I'll be moderating today's event with my colleague Luciane. The title of today's webinar is Engaging Youth in Planning. Espoo broke all records with an online tool. Over the next hour, we'll hear presentations from our partners and we'll also have a panel discussion. And we want to hear from you. So please add your comments, questions in the chat, and we will turn to those towards the end of the discussion. We will also share the presentation and the recording with you who registered after the event. So now I'm just going to hand over to Luciane, who will talk a little bit more about the NORDGREEN project and introduce our fabulous speakers. Luciane.
Thank you, Annika. Yes, hello, I am Luciane Borges. I am Senior Research Fellow here at NordRegio and Project Manager of NORDGREEN, which is founded by NordForsk. The project NORDGREEN develops management solutions for well-designed, high-quality green spaces that promote equity, health, and well-being. And we develop the solutions using an innovative approach, research approach that examines the health green space nexus with assistance from the epidemiological research, environmental psychology, co-creation, and governance. To do this, we have a consortium with the participation of 4 research institutions in 6 Nordic cities. And today we have here with us our partners from Autio University and Espoo Municipality, and they will share with us experiences in integrating youth demands and use of green spaces into planning processes through the application of public participatory methods. Our first speaker will be Marketa Kita. She is a professor of land use planning at Autio University at the Department of Built Environment. And her expertise focuses on the development of place-based approaches in participatory planning and human environment research. Partially based on her work, we have tools like Maptionary to collect experiential data for planning applications. She also has a vast experience in child-friendly environments. We will then turn to Heli-Maja Nevala, who works at the City Planning Department of Espoo, where she leads the team responsible for communication and participation. Her background is in sustainable futures and lifelong learning. She and her 5-member team are devoted to experimenting and developing new approaches to participation in city planning. And then finally, we will hear from Sanna Rossi, a doctoral researcher in the Spatial Planning and Transportation Research Group at Autio University. She is writing her dissertation on the impact citizen participation has on planning outcomes and how this impact is communicated to the public. Her background is in architecture and planning practices, and she also participates in urban policymaking in Helsinki. So let me now turn over to Marketa, who will start off the presentations.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Best from Paris, where I happen to be enjoying the spring weather. So next, please. And can we have the presentation mode? Next. So let me briefly tell you about a study that we did in Aalto University in very close collaboration with City of Espoo. As part of NORDGREEN projects, we realized a large survey. Next, please. The goal was to collect map-based knowledge from inhabitants of the city of Espoo about the experiences and behavioral patterns of citizens. And this knowledge would then be used by the city as a background knowledge in planning and management projects. The survey themes included the mapping of everyday network, quality network, and future suggestions. Additionally, we did also ask some background information and questions regarding individuals' health and well-being. Next, please. The collected data set was probably the largest participatory mapping or public participation GIS data set ever collected in Finland. It actually included over 6,600 participants and nearly 70,000 mapped locations. To the surprise of us in the university, the city of Espoo wanted to invest especially in the data collected from children and young people. Today, we will learn more how they did that. Next. The survey looked like this. It was almost identical for adults and young people. Next. As I said, we asked people, for example, to map their everyday network. This means that they were marking on the map places that are used as part of their daily life, like a school, a grocery store, or a place where you walk with your dog. Next. But we also wanted to ask about the personal quality network. And with this, we mean that there are probably places that are personally meaningful, either positively or negatively for an individual that we might not visit so often, and yet they are very important for us for one reason or another. Next. And finally, we ask people to mark their future suggestions on the map regarding, for example, the kind of developmental ideas they might have related to various themes of the city development, or they could locate possible sites for new infill projects and also mark important centers that might need development. So now it is time to pass on to Heli-Maija, who will tell you more about the data collection in Espoo.
Thank you, Marketta, and good morning, everyone. My name is Heli-Maija, and I come from the city of Espoo, the city planning department. Next, please. My team, altogether 6 persons, is responsible for communication and participation. So we help inhabitants and other stakeholders to gain understandable information about planning and to participate in a meaningful way. We also help our staff in their encounterings with stakeholders. First, a few words about Espoo. Next, please. Espoo is the neighboring city of Helsinki in the west, and with 300,000 inhabitants, it's Finland's second largest and fastest growing city. Typical to Espoo is its diversity of environments, densifying urban centers, widespread detached housing, countryside, and broad forests, including the national park Nuuksio. Espoo has a long seashore and many lakes. It's the home to Aalto University, other research institutes, and 15,000 enterprises. Next, please. With the growing population, more housing, jobs, services, and transportation are needed. And at the same time, we must consider numerous other aspects, such as climate impact and diversity of nature. Land use planning is conducted by our 130 experts from various fields. They gather and combine data and cooperate to create proposals for decision makers. And of course, this can't be done without communication and interaction with stakeholders. Next, please. With urban planning, we impact the future, and actually we design future. A future for today's children and youth. However, young people are underrepresented in public participation in general. With my survey on the map, my Espoo on the map survey, we wanted to put special emphasis on engaging youth, and not only the most active individuals who already participate in youth councils and organizations. So how do you reach young people? School is the most obvious answer. Kids up to age 15 go to comprehensive school, and most of them continue to high school or vocational school. However, cooperation between schools and city planning is not as simple as you'd think. I have also a teacher education, and I have worked a lot with schools, for example, in pedagogic projects and teacher trainings. So I had experienced many times the joy and the challenges of cooperation. Next, please. Schools and city planning are both organizations with strong and specific regulations, hierarchies, processes, and tradition. They live very much in their bubbles. A school might put up a learning project in which pupils express their ideas or comment their neighborhood, but the planners don't know what to do with such random input. The city planning department might ask schools to participate in a public review, but the schoolmaster doesn't know how to fit it into the curriculum and schoolwork. And still, participation of young people is genuinely a shared goal. To make it click, we must find where these two realities meet. Shared objectives, the right timing, and the real impact. Next, please. So school is a great place to reach and engage youth when you build cooperation that genuinely serves school's purpose and everyday reality. We wanted to reach out to a significant number of young people, so we couldn't rely on the most enthusiastic teachers or pay a few visits to classes. We had to build a systematic approach to reach and motivate teachers in a big scale. Next, please. So to make it click, we designed a path to cooperation. First, we contacted the city's learning sector management, and together we discussed the goals, opportunities, and terms of cooperation. We then explored the curricula of comprehensive school, high school, and vocational school. We recognized the subjects and classes for which participation in this survey would be relevant. For the comprehensive school, we selected 6th and 9th grade and several subjects such as geography, social studies, and visual arts. For high school and vocational school, we chose specific courses. Based on the curriculum, we proposed specific learning objectives, and we crystallized the motivation for the teacher in learning and impact. We then designed a learning path for pupils and a teacher package to support it. It consisted of a handbook, learning sessions, and ready-made materials such as slides and short videos. This was communicated to teachers and headmasters early on. And the timeline for answering the survey was long, 2 months. This allowed teachers to plan and fit the activity to their schedules. And the learning sector management took care of informing the schools in their channels. Next, please. Another key element was the pupils' participation. In a preliminary session, the teacher gave them an introduction to city planning and motivation to the survey. We tried to make ourselves easily approachable, for example, presenting some of our co-workers on the slides and explaining why it's important to us that you share your views. Next, the teacher gave the pupils a pre-activity, helping them orientate to the survey's questions. They were asked to take photos of their everyday environments. The next session started by the pupils sharing to each other their photos and thoughts. And they reflected on what kind of things seem to characterize places that are inviting or uninviting to young people, and what they thought should be developed or kept as it is in their neighborhoods. Then they answered the survey individually. And finally, the teacher led the pupils to reflect on their experiences and learning. And then my colleague at the time, the master planning manager, Johanna, thanked the pupils on a short video and explained how we are going to use the data. Next, please. As a result, over 2,400 young people answered the survey, mostly 6th and 9th graders. They mapped over 16,000 locations. Next, please. If you want to take a look at some experiments that we've done last year with children and youth, you can check a blog post, the links on the slide. But next, Sana is going to tell you about some results of the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Heli-Maija, and good morning, everyone. My name is Sana Rossi, and it's been really nice to hear where everybody is joining in from. I'll tell a little bit about the results and then how we have used them and analyzed them so far. If we can have the next slide, please. So our goal from the beginning was that these youth results would be shared simultaneously and equally to the adult survey results. So often we try to engage youths in planning, but then we separate the results and treat them as kind of their own thing to look at children's material separately. But here it was delivered equally and together with adult results, so they won't be kind of differentiated while looking at the results in total. We have worked together with the planners and officials from other sectors at the city of Espoo to find out their needs on how they could use this type of survey data for their planning work or for their other development work, and how we can find out the risks beforehand, get the information out there about this material existing, and then get the knowledge delivered to them through this Espoo planning system. They use Locus Cloud by Trimble, if some of you have in the audience used that in your cities, to deliver the information there in a way that is kind of easy for them to use, because we wanted this material to be used as a background knowledge layer in all future planning processes. So similarly to whether you're getting any type of GIS data, you're getting information about the properties for a background in a planning project, you would also get already the experiential data from citizens, from a wide age group, from the city-wide area to your planning process. Next, please. And because of this, because we collected such a huge amount of data, we did not plan to analyze this whole data set in bulk. So we're not going to produce a PowerPoint presentation kind of taking together, losing all the nuances, but rather we wanted to deliver all of this data, all of these results to the planners, so that when they have a specific process touching upon a specific area or a specific topic, they can go and look through the material themselves. They can access, hopefully, the help of GIS experts to look through the data then, but it won't be pre-processed. Of course, it will be pre-processed in a way that it's as easy to access as possible, but they are able to always have access to the full set rather than just the generalized vision of what the participants in a specific area have said. And we hope that this will kind of change the attitude towards participation also in further phases in projects, when you are already starting the project with the base point of knowing the citizens' hopes and needs and development ideas in an area, rather than coming up with plans and then presenting them to citizens, then asking them. But rather you're able already to show when you're going again to citizens, for example, in planning projects in the legally mandated participation, and you can already show that we have taken into account your opinions, and now you can kind of validate or refute those or add or deepen the knowledge that we are basing this project on. Next, please. We had a couple of theses made on these youth responses, and I'm going to go a little bit into those so you can have a little bit of an idea what we can do with these results. So first is the bachelor's thesis of Linda Autio, both of these are done at the Department of Spatial Planning and Transportation in Aalto. And she looked at the development of the Espoonlahti area, which is a neighborhood in Espoo, which will be developed specifically in a family-oriented way in the future years. And this area was actually suggested by planning officials in that area to have kind of more of an in-depth idea about youth's needs for this area. And Linda looked at the results, how youths divided their vision of their future Espoo. She looked at how they described the aesthetic and social and functional environment, and also what type of safety concerns they had, particularly related to traffic, and then also some about kind of feelings of social safety in the central areas. And she found out that these development ideas mapped by youths are highly practical, and implementing them can easily make the neighborhood better for all of the residents. So they're not kind of super complex ways to develop or kind of long-term development processes, but easy things to make the neighborhood safer and more pleasant for everyone. And also she found that children have quite differing levels of access to areas outside of immediate walking distance of their home, and this changes their perception of the environment. So we have to take into account in not just planning, but also any type of city official services or environments available to the kids, that not all of them have, for example, car rides available to get to further away places or to have hobbies further away from home. So we need to make sure that the close by environment that they can access individually from a relatively young age is pleasant to them, is safe for them, and allows them this independence of movement. Next, please. And then finally, the master's thesis of Ella Paasilina also looked a little bit more in depth into these materials and analyzed the home range of the youths that had responded to this survey. And she found out from these main respondent groups of 6th and 9th graders that their mean home range in these places that they reported was 15 kilometers, but regardless of this, over half of all of the results or mappings that they made were located near to 2 kilometers from their home. And she found that this is maybe obvious that older children had a wider range, but also that girls had a wider range. And I think this is something that we have to take into account while designing the neighborhoods that kids live in. we found, and I think this has been found in previous studies done by Marketta and our team, that a majority of the places that the kids located were in built areas, so 88% of them, and only a minority of them were in green areas. And then once the age group of respondents gets older, more of their markings will be in green areas, but children and youth are particularly reliant on the built spaces. So we may need to make sure that those are also pleasant, and you can also maybe have kind of nature experiences within the built environment as well, outside of forests and parks. And finally, we found, and I think this is interesting, related to the project's topics of kind of environmental connections to health and well-being, that very large home ranges, so if the children marked spots over 20 kilometers from their home, were associated with lower perceived health. And coming back to the previous slide, if we manage to have this local area be kind of inviting and pleasant and safe for the kids, then, for example, this being again less reliant on car rides and then having more independent and active mobility often translates to a better health for the kids and kind of builds a good basis for that from a young age. So this is something that hopefully we can deliver also to Espoo planning even more than we have now, and see in the future how these children's ideas and responses have been taken into account to make more child-friendly environments in the city. Thank you. I think this is all.
Thanks so much, Sanna, Heli-Maija, and Marketta. I think it was just so fascinating for me to hear about how creative and innovative you were both in reaching and engaging youth, and then also what the data itself shows. So I'm not someone who's been as in-depth in the project, so I feel I already learned a lot from just this presentation. But I thought I'd start with you, Marketta, and just ask, what did we learn in the actual survey process?
Well, I think that this data collection procedure developed by Heli-Maija and her colleagues was a very big innovation. We have done similar data collection before in other projects, also working closely with schools, but it has been typically realized so that a research assistant will visit schools, agree with teachers, suitable times, etc. And it has been very complicated and time consuming. So we would have probably spend like at least several months of work of this research assistant to collect a data set like this. And in fact, we have never before collected quite this big data set from children and young people. So we are trying to upscale this approach elsewhere, for sure, and test how it works.
Just a follow-up question to that, what do you think were some of the biggest innovations? Was it the putting more onus on the teachers and making it very easy for them to implement it?
Yes.
Maybe the personal touches, the videos, all that?
Well, yes, well, all that, but I think it was really like because Heli-Maija has background in education. She didn't have any trouble stepping to the shoes of a teacher, and also thinking about this all from the perspective of young people themselves. So that was crucially important.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marketta, for sharing your ideas here. Well, I believe that all of us, we agree that giving young people a place in decision-making builds a broader base for citizen involvement, and also like create stronger and more inclusive communities. And also, like, we see that youth participation is a priority in the European Union youth strategy. So I think this reinforces also like the importance of of this participatory process that you implemented in Espoo. And you actually you were very successful, in doing that, since you managed to have this connection with the schools, to very systematic, and also to involve more than 1,000 youth. So I think this was really amazing, and especially thinking that youth are perhaps like a hard to reach groups in planning. But then I would like to dig into a little bit in the process. So my question goes to Heli-Maija. And so how did the teachers and the students, how do they respond to this strategy? Because you have coordinate this and then come to them like with a package. So I would like to hear something more about that.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's kind of funny. We didn't have so much direct contact with teachers or the youth. We did make a feedback questionnaire, but only a handful of teachers responded, and they were really satisfied with the contents and the communication of the whole project. But I think the most important feedback to us is the response to the survey. So teachers clearly found the package both meaningful and functional, and probably, hopefully, interesting to the kids too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this. So I also wonder about like in terms of like resources, yeah, which kind of resources or like was necessary, was required like to engage youths in this process. And another question, follow-up question on that would be like, do you believe that this kind of approach that you have implemented like in city of Espoo together with Aalto can be then transferred, replicated to other cities?
Yes, of course, this approach did take some good work. We had to establish the cooperation, work on the curriculum, design the path for cooperation and participation, all the materials, and then communicating it to the schools. And we also did this in 2 languages, Finnish and Swedish, which always adds up. And we did it separately to all these 3 levels of schools. So altogether, I think it was like 2 weeks of efficient working time. But I think this approach is rather easy to transfer to another city in Finland. We have a national core curriculum, which is the basis for all teachers' work. And also the administration is built rather similarly in different cities. So I think this is, within Finland, this is very transferable. But I also think that the key elements of our approach can be transferred to other countries. The understanding of the fundament of cooperation and the path to cooperation and to participation.
Thank you. Yeah. I would turn to Sanna, that you share with us like that the results of the survey can be used as a knowledge base for decision making, and was actually like very inspiring like to hear from you like the cooperation that you had like with Espoo that seems very successful and like very yeah, it's amazing like how you managed to actually taking like this a layer of information about the survey and put it together like with a database for planners that the planners can actually then consult this and use this for planning. So I would like just to know a little bit more about who responded these surveys, or more or less about like where the responses were. They were like evenly distributed geographically, like or by age groups, or you actually got like more replies on in particular parts of the city, like more around the schools and so on. So this would be good to hear from you.
Yes. I think we had a relatively good success in getting a wide representativeness, and especially in getting the results from around the city. So as you could see, although it was of course a very general image with all of the results, but they were very distributed, and Espoo is a huge geographical area. So I think we managed to reach schools in different parts of the city quite well. I think, and somebody had asked in the chat as well about the representativeness in general, about the different nationalities. Espoo is quite a multicultural city and with lots of different languages being spoken, and different economic backgrounds. And I think while in these surveys typically always economically more well-to-do backgrounds are often more represented in citizen participation, I think here, because of course we didn't ask this from kids, so what kind of income level your family has, but I think because we reached them through schools, we had a ton of different mother tongues, for example, being spoken, and people with different backgrounds, having been born in Finland or having been born elsewhere and then moved to Finland, were quite well represented in this youth survey. We also asked these questions about perceived health and well-being and about mobility or other restrictions that would impact people's behavior in the public space or their kind of needs towards the public space. And while here as well, we usually get more results of people who have relatively good perceived health and quality of life, we also did get some responses, both from youths and from adults, if we're speaking about that as well, about people who have significant, for example, mobility restrictions. And I think this can really inform planning well, because this is often the types of groups, for example, that don't have accessibility to these public participation events live. So if we have managed to get that type of information remotely, I think then we have succeeded somewhat. One thing about, you asked about the age groups, I think with that, Heli-Maija can add to this a little bit, but we struggled a little bit in reaching high school and vocational school students. So in comprehensive school, the kids, I think, have still a little bit more kind of room for teachers to be creative within the curriculum and how they kind of choose to reach those teaching objectives. While in high school, the curriculum is very, very kind of pressurized and pre-planned. And then in vocational school, they have a lot of these kind of practice sessions in companies, and they're not maybe so much sitting together with a teacher, so they don't have really that much time to go over these results. So I think Heli-Maija can add to how we try to reach those groups and how we think we could do better in the future. But I think that's something that we maybe missed. But I think, again, the best place to reach people is in comprehensive school, where everybody is in the same place. And I think there we kind of managed well, and people from a different background within the classes responded relatively equally. So I think we have a diverse set of results that can really inform planning quite nicely.
Heli-Maija, would you like to jump in and comment there as well?
Yes, thank you. I think Sana just explained the most important thing. I'd say, more than 90% of the responders were 6th or 9th graders. So high school and vocational school didn't really jump in at all the same way. They're both rather different from comprehensive schools. So this result was disappointing, but it wasn't surprising. In Finland, high schools concentrate very much on preparing the pupils for matriculation examination, because these days it plays a huge role in regard to further studies. So the teachers and the students are busy, they are all stressed out, they have very tight course objectives and schedules. Knowing this, we tried to offer this content to some very specific courses where we thought it would fit and meet the learning objectives. But perhaps this cropping and also the timing, 2 months, was too tight. But in the future, we need to learn more about how to serve high schools better. And vocational students, these days, they spend most of the time outside school because they are learning at working places. So perhaps this 2 months survey period was actually too short for this target group. They weren't having their social studies exactly during that time frame, even though the teachers' original response to our initiative towards them was very positive. We don't quite know why they still didn't end up using time for this.
Well, it's a lesson learned, and then for the future, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I would like just to turn to Sanna again. You touch upon a little bit about health and well-being perspectives. So I would like, because this is a core theme, let's say, like in NORDGREEN project. So I would like to know a little bit about how these perspectives they have been included in the survey, and then what kind of insights you can share with us about this. You said a bit, but if you can expand more.
Yeah, so in Marketta's team where I work at Aalto, this kind of health and environmental connection has been a key source of a topic of research for a long time already, and we try to always include those perspectives in surveys as well, so we can kind of find out about this more about people's behavior and about the environment's impact on their perceived health and well-being, or these different connections. And I would think we've been looking quite thoroughly at them also in the articles we've been writing here. And in the youth survey in particular, we included these background questions to find out about their perceived health and quality of life, and as well about their mobility restrictions, like I mentioned, and the research that we've been doing so far, or that our thesis workers have been doing so far, has related to how those perceived and health and well-being correlate with the locations they mapped, with the different mobility, or with the different kind of modes of transport that they chose or are reliant on in their everyday life. And as mentioned, the kind of wide range of where they map the locations, and also if they have kind of these multi-centric activity spaces. So whether they have, for example, 2 homes, or they have a specific point of access additionally to their own home, and how those impact their health and well-being. And here I hope that also planners can use this as a background information when they are doing more in-depth analysis about the results, so that they can find out, for example, if they want to specifically serve people who don't perceive their health and well-being to be as good. And in one article led by Marketta, which was studying the adult results, but I think can be as well applied to the youth results, we found that because we also asked people to map the kind of perceived positive or negative, or the perceived quality of the place that they mapped. So from a slider from 0 to 100, how nice they see, or how good or bad they feel about a place. So if people mapped these very negative places where they visited often, that had a connection to kind of poorer health and well-being than the other places which didn't have a clear connection to this. So I think this is important perspective to look at when the planners are looking at the material. So if they have a lot of places in a specific neighborhood where people have to visit often, that they perceive as negative, this may be negatively impacting their life quality. It might be negatively impacting how much they actually want to go outside and do these active behaviors in the neighborhood, and those should be paid attention to. And as all surveys, in the youth survey as well, overwhelming majority of the places that the kids mapped are positive. So we always think as planners that people will report that they actually hate everything, and that's not the case. People will always map 90%, 95% positive places, and like very positive place. They will remember 10 positive places and this one place they hate. So if we can kind of appreciate the places that they already like, and then pinpoint those places that they have trouble with and that they are forced to visit often, and put those, then I think we can also improve people's ability to get a better quality of life, or kind of have healthier behaviors through the developments in the environment.
Thank you so much for your input. I would also like to highlight that is amazing, like how you manage somehow to put together like research, practice, and education in different levels. Yeah, how you engage like the students, like from the survey who reply to the survey, but also like in education at Aalto University, like with this master thesis and so on, and how much this data set has been so rich, then that has like serve like for such a different purpose. So it's actually a very inspiring example, I would say. I would like now to pick up like on the results that Sana presented, that she mentioned that 88% of the teenagers between 12 and 15 years old identify their places of range in build-up areas, and less than 12% pinpointed like public green areas. And this is like a kind of, it's a bit surprising, or maybe not, but sounds a bit like a big difference. But I would like to hear like from Marketa then, like how this finding can be reflected for city planning. What does it mean? Like what can we learn from this?
Well, maybe I can first say that we have done, even before, a meta study about all mappings of all different age groups. And we have found that positive mappings tend to be in natural and green areas the more the older the person is. So for younger people, the positive place can be a shopping center. Yeah, it can. It is. So, and I don't know if there is nothing wrong about that. But if we want to attract children and young people more to green areas, we have to pay more attention to them as a user group. In fact, teenagers or young people, I'm afraid, traditionally have been neglected clearly in urban planning. You know, we do plan for younger children. We design playgrounds, but we don't even know what would attract teenagers. So it's time to ask them and listen to them.
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
Yes.
I thought I would take one question from the chat, and then we can come back to you, Luciana, if you had one. But it's a question about ethics. And can you share more about the ethics process for engaging youth? So did they have to sign any consent forms? Did their parents? So maybe Helle-Maja, you would like to respond to that.
Yeah, this is something that we agreed on with the school sector, so that they arrange it between the school and the parents, because they have the access to parents.
Good. So it was actually quite simple, it sounds.
Yes, I don't remember the details, as it is like 2.5 years ago. But if somebody's really interested in that, I can check the details.
Okay. Do you have more
we do have some more, but I think it goes back to a bit of what Sanna was mentioning, and you mentioned how the master's students have used the data, but sort of what are the procedures to ensure that planners actually use the data? I mean, I think what you mentioned, Sanna, which is so interesting, is that planners can now use this when they begin planning, rather than to plan something and then get the feedback. But maybe a question then, how do you ensure that they will do that? Is there anything in place?
If I can add a tiny bit first to the previous question about this research ethics, and just to mention that we also do have a research ethics committee at Aalto University, and we did send them these surveys to be looked over, and that we're not collecting any knowledge that we shouldn't be collecting, and we're kind of giving people the freedom to, for example, map their home locations a little bit vaguely if they live in a detached house that could be associated with them. So we try to make sure that that's all being done as well as possible, and we're being very careful in storing the data and delivering this data. So
and anonymizing the data if needed.
Yes. But coming to this question about how it's ensured that we use, so first we have of course tried to make it as accessible as possible to the planners, and we have had these workshops where we have worked together to develop how this material is delivered within this planning system, and I think we have had like in total, maybe 150 participants in those workshops from the city of Espoo. Of course, some of them might have been attending several of the workshops, but still, I think we have had a relatively good interest from the planners. So I think this kind of carrot side of trying to encourage the planners to use this material is there already. And then we don't have, I think, or at Espoo, I don't think there is in place kind of a system to ensure that, okay, you have now looked at this based on a specific standard, But what I think has been done exceptionally well has been that because, and somebody asked about the timing as well, so there was of course a delay when we could deliver this material to this Locus Cloud system because there were some technical issues that needed to be ironed out. So during that, there were these emergent practices that planners were already starting to like, okay, we heard we have this awesome material, we want to use this. And then they had this like a PowerPoint slide deck where they could kind of just replace their own, like look at this own specific area and then have this like ready-made set of parameters, and then they could print it out and then they could use that as work. So we tried to build from those, and I mean it might sound kind of simple that okay, we have this like specific layouts ready that we can just get the material out of, but we are trying to use and take the systems and the practices the planners are already using and go from those. So not kind of come from above with these new ways that you have to do or these new methods you have to use, but learn from what the planners are doing and then take that when we have it integrated into the system, which we now have, and make it more simple. So to easily or to quickly respond that specific question, in the material for background for planning projects, we have a specific slide or a section devoted to these survey responses. So everybody should, if they're following that template for how to report these background materials, they also have a page where they have to report about this survey details. And then they already have material that they can use, for example, for future participation processes related to the more specific area development. So, and we hope to be able to, during my thesis or during future these like bachelor's or master's thesis works, to be able to follow up on how this has been used in already realized planning projects.
Yes, thank you. And I was going to turn to you, Helen-Maja, and maybe you can comment on what your colleagues, what they've been saying.
Yes, we've talked about this many times, and I earlier put a link to the website where we communicate about this whole survey for the city inhabitants. And there are some examples of projects and how the data was used in actual planning. And there are just a few examples that we've written into articles on the practical side. But I think this is a very important question, because in order to have impact, you have to look at the whole path all the way to the actual use of the data, and it's not quite simple. It doesn't cover exactly the same themes in every single area, and depending on how wide an area you're starting to plan, you might end up with kind of random results where people happen to answer in a specific way. So I think it can only be used kind of as one basis of data.
And actually, a kind of a question that's linked is, are there any other follow-up plans for this work? For example, with future urban development, is there already some areas that are clearly ready to use the data? I'll go to you, Helen-Maja, if you know.
Actually, I don't know exactly about those, because my job was mostly to reach out to the schools.
Yes.
But in Espoo, we just started a huge master plan process that reaches out to year 2060 and regards the whole city. And for example, in that process, this material, this data is very important and is going to be used widely. And also with the public, we do a lot of public discussion about the future of Espoo. For example, we conducted a big series of events where we discussed future for Espoo with our inhabitants. And in those sessions, we also talked about the results in different areas that we received through this survey. So we've kind of used them also as a, something to discuss further with the with the inhabitants.
With your citizens, yeah. Luciana, did you have a question you want to jump in? Otherwise, we have a couple more from the audience.
I think we have like really interesting questions from our audience. I was just seeing that there is someone from Poland. I'm quite happy this reach out in this webinar. So
yes.
Please go ahead.
One of the questions, and I think Marketa and Sanna have responded to it a bit in the chat, but maybe to bring it up for anyone, is this technical question and the system you used for collecting map points. And you know, where can we learn more? And I think it's Maptionnaire, if I'm right. But I'll go to you, Marketa, to explain.
Yes. Well, this is actually an innovation of my team already since 15 years ago. So we have wanted to develop a way to collect place-based knowledge from people, because we think that as soon as you link your experience to a specific place, you give it an address, it will become very much more useful to planners than knowledge that would stay in a more abstract level, because then it's always closely related to specific planning and design solutions. So and I'm very happy to tell that this methodology is nowadays used in Finland by most of the cities already, and it has somehow revolutionized public participation. There are other people who have developed similar place-based tools, and that has been a big part of the digitalized public participation practices that COVID pandemic also then boosted, because during COVID you couldn't organize the normal public hearings or focus group meetings. So cities really started to look for digital alternatives. And this is one of them. There are of course more digital tools that can be used effectively. And maybe I can still say that children and young people have been one of the most easy to approach user groups with this kind of digital methodology. They very seldom have difficulties in using this methodology. They are very fluent in mapping, and the accuracy of their mappings is very remarkably good.
Maybe not surprising.
No.
When I see my kids at home who are 4 and quite proficient with a cell phone already. Well, we are starting to run out of time. So I'd like to thank our 3 speakers and all of you in the audience who joined us. As we mentioned earlier, we will share this PowerPoint and the recording with you all in the coming days. And I also want to remind you about the second webinar in this series, which will be on the 28th of April. And then we're going to learn about how to connect green space and health indicators in city planning. And then we'll have a special focus on our Täby city partner.
Yes, thank you, Annika, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marketa, Helimaya, Sanna. It was very nice to hear from you and have this discussion. I would like to say to the audience as well, thank you so much for joining us today. And then if you have any other questions that was not addressed here, you feel free to email me. You find my contact details at NORDGREEN website. And then I will find a way to reply to you. I'll be in touch with the researchers, and then we will find a way to reply to you. I also would like to say that if you want to stay up to date with NORDGREEN project, please sign up to our newsletter. And we have a handbook as well coming up in the end of the year, sharing all this experience from other work packages as well. So please just join us. And I would thank you again for joining. And we hope to see you next time. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.